Good morning, my friends. Today we are doing lesson 9.4 on subordinate conjunctions. That should sound familiar to you. We have used these before when we were studying about clauses, specifically adverb clauses, but they are used in other ways as well. But we have studied all those ways, so this should sound familiar to you as we go through it. Let's get started. So a subordinate conjunction, this is going to be a conjunction that's joining an independent clause and a dependent clause, and it indicates their relationship. What does that mean? That means whichever conjunction you pick, that's giving you information to why those two clauses go together. Typically, we're going to see these subordinate conjunctions at the beginning of an adverb clause. It's going to introduce an adverb clause. So when we were studying adverb clauses, we use these to help us find them. These clauses are going to describe verbs, adjectives, or adverbs in the independent clause. It's going to answer questions such as how, why, to what extent, and under what conditions something is happening. So let me give you an example and put it back into your mindset. When we studied ancient Greece, we learned about the Acropolis. When is the subordinate conjunction? Okay, that's indicating we have an adverb clause in we studied ancient Greece. So when we studied ancient Greece is an adverb clause modifying the word learned because it's giving us more information about learned. All right. So that's what a subordinate conjunction does. It's introducing that independent clause. Now, they can also be used for adjective clause, the words where and when. Okay, so those are going to be the conjunctions that are used to introduce adjective clauses. So again, we've talked about this when we did the adjective clause lesson. So here's our example. I wonder about the time when this great fortress was created. So in this case, when is the subordinate conjunction that introduces the clause that modifies time. It's telling us more about time. All right, what happened at that time? Well, this was when the fortress was created at that time. All right. And noun clauses. Remember that lesson? Noun clauses may also be introduced by subordinate conjunctions, such as how and that and whoever, what, why, when, whether. There are many of them, too many to list here, but I will give you a full list on the next page. So, an example of a noun clause, remember that's a clause that takes the place of a noun in a sentence. It can be the subject, complement, object of a preposition, and so on. So in this case, it's the subject of the sentence. How he found the house was in itself a mystery. So how is the subordinate conjunction? How he found the house, that's the noun clause. It's acting as the subject of the sentence. Now, here is a list of all of the common subordinate conjunctions. It is a much more extensive list than I gave you when we were doing our clause lessons. So make sure that you make a note of this in your notebook so that you have a list that is more detailed as you are looking for these and as you are using them in your writing. Now let's practice finding them and finding the dependent clauses. When you are doing your lesson practice today, this is what you're going to need to do. You're going to need to find these subordinate conjunctions. And it should be fairly easy if you use the list that I give you. So let's get started. The magnificence of some artwork would probably overwhelm us if we could see them in their original form. So we're looking for a word, a conjunction that is joining the dependent clause to the independent clause. So let's look at this and see if you can find it. Hopefully you said if. All right, so if we could see them in their original form is the dependent clause connected to the independent clause of the magnificence of some artwork would probably overwhelm us. You can see that that can stand alone as its own sentence, where if we could see them in their original form cannot stand alone. All right, let's look at the second one. Although the body of the god was gold, the flesh was ivory. So what subordinate conjunction do you see there? Hopefully you said although. Now notice this one comes at the beginning of the sentence, but it is working in the same way. Although the body of the God was gold is a dependent clause, and although is connecting it to the flesh was ivory. You have to have that word although there. The flesh was ivory is the independent clause because it could stand alone. You don't actually need the rest of the sentence to make it make sense. The third example, the statue of Athena was of the same rich materials, even though it was somewhat shorter. So what's the subordinate clause there? Hopefully you said even though. What's the dependent clause? Even though it was somewhat shorter. So that's the dependent clause connected to the statue of Athena was of the same rich materials. That's the independent clause. All right, the next one. As the centuries passed, the colors faded or were damaged. So what do you see there? Hopefully you see as. As is going to be your conjunction there. And your dependent clause is as the centuries passed, and your independent clause is the colors faded or were damaged. The last example. If you visit certain museums, you can see reproductions of the statues or temples as they looked originally. Now, this sentence has a lot of depth to it. This is the type of sentence that I want you to start using in your writing. This has two dependent clauses in it. Let's see if you can find both of them. First, let's look for those conjunctions. Do you see any of them? Hopefully you see if. If you visit certain museums is your first dependent clause. All right? It's connected to the independent clause. You can see reproductions of the statues or temples. Now your second dependent clause starts with the conjunction as. As they looked originally is your second dependent clause. So you can see by having two dependent clauses and one independent clause joined with those conjunctions, that gives much more depth to your writing. All right, hopefully this helps you understand and helps you as you practice today. If you have any questions as you're working, please don't hesitate to ask me, and have a great day.